So what's my future?
You don't have one.
I see you, but you can't see me.
It's time for you to meet me. For over 2 decades, Halloween Horror Nights Orlando has mastered the art of the scare. We'll cover each year of this amazing event one by one, picking through the bones and uncovering its past. So join us now as we open another tomb inside the Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights.
Welcome to the Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights podcast. This episode is all about the icon, the Caretaker. I am Matt, and joining me this episode, as usual, are my co-hosts Quint.
Hello.
And Karen.
Hello.
Now, we kind of just talked about the Caretaker a little bit last episode. He was introduced in the 2002 event, Islands of Fear, which was our last episode. And I held back a lot of the details of his backstory because, as you're about to find out, there's enough information and enough to talk about for his own episode.
Wow, this is cool. And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is also kind of almost a bonus episode with Cindy?
No, not really, because...
Or are you going to keep the Cindy stuff for
because there's kind of a idea I have brewing for, I wouldn't say lost icons, and I don't want to say miscellaneous, but one's a little too extreme and the other's too demeaning, so I don't know which title to call it, if that makes sense.
Out between now and then.
Yep, and there's a video, I don't know, that I would have pointed out to you two immediately while would be in line for, I think the best place to see it was Body Collectors in the regular line. That's probably why we didn't see it now that I think about it. I don't think you got to see this video while in the express line, but there's a video, an Icons video, and there's a Cindy video. It's on YouTube, and that is something I'd want to feature in that episode as well, and that would be a little too long for this particular one. So
for me.
This one is all about Caretaker. Of course, Cindy will be mentioned with it being his daughter, but on to the Caretaker. So a lot of this, I shouldn't say a lot, that's not true. But some of this is going to be a little bit of repeated information from the last episode and from the summary we did of the Icons episode. But I do want to tell the entire story here again. So even though it starts off with stuff we already know, don't worry, we're going to get into some interesting things here very shortly. So first and foremost, the Caretaker, that is his icon name, as we know. His real name is Dr. Albert Caine. And he was a doctor, a practicing doctor. He was actually a well-respected surgeon at one point in his life. But when we come to know him, it's at the start of his Caretaker story. It's when he became the caretaker of the Shady Oak Cemetery in Willamette Valley. Now, he had left his medical practice and moved to Willamette Valley with his daughter, the mysterious, as you just said, Cindy. Now, I keep saying Willamette Valley because there's a reason for that, because Willamette Valley has a little bit of a story of his own, or at least the town that it's in does. And I'll just put a little bit of the history here for it. It's part of the town of Carey, Ohio. And this is the setting of many, many backstories of many, many Halloween Horror Nights original IPs. A lot of their origin stories take place in Carey, Ohio.
Is this the same as the Shady Oaks Asylum?
Shady Brook?
Oh, Shady Brook.
Shady Brook. No, Shady Brook, I believe, has some foot in Carey, Ohio. I wrote down some of the notes of what has actually happened in Carey, Ohio that Quinn will know some of these. Karen, they might be new to you. Mm-hmm. The story of Bloody Mary, Dr. Mary Agana, which that's another character we're going to cover in her own episode because she has a huge, incredibly creepy and interesting backstory. Her practice, her entire story takes place in Carey, Ohio. Leave It to Cleaver, the tongue-in-cheek human slaughterhouse / deli, that was in Carey, Ohio. HR Blood and Guts. Quentin knows this one for sure. We went through it together. This is one that actually comes up a lot. This is the local TV studio for the local TV station of Carey, Ohio.
But how does that tie to Willamette?
Willamette is didn't say. Oh, I must have. Oh, I don't even have that note. I must have skipped. I didn't even put it in my notes. Willamette is it's like a community inside Carey, Ohio.
Huh.
Like
okay.
I live in Hunters Creek, but it's actually part of Orlando, Florida.
Right.
Oh, okay, got it. Because I'm like looking at Willamette Valley, and that's in like Oregon.
No, that's not the.
Yeah. And they have good wine there. That's why I knew it.
Okay, which is kind of, it's funny. You know what? I knew that, so I had that note to write. I just didn't write it. So I'm glad you asked that question because I would have never went onto that. Acid Assault, the 3D mapped scare zone, that was in Carey, Ohio. Havoc Derailed. This is the crash train that was carrying these psychopathic, genetically engineered super soldiers for Halloween Horror Nights 23 that derailed in Carey, Ohio. So Carey, Ohio has had a huge history. This is just a small part of it. It's not even quite half. It's maybe a third of the things that have happened that I noted, but this is just giving you a sense of the odd things that happen in Carey, Ohio, including the Caretaker's cemetery story that we're getting into right now. So now, while the Caretaker was still the respected surgeon I mentioned before, he was obsessively interested in the workings of the human body, particularly instances when he couldn't save a patient. He knew how to do the surgeries, he knew how to fix and seal wounds, but he didn't know what he had missed when the patient had died. So this drove him out of the practice of medicine and into something a little darker. And that is what leads to him becoming a caretaker of a cemetery. This was no accident. This wasn't I'm a new guy in town, I got to find a job, I'll take whatever you get. He wanted this job. Along with taking this caretaker position, he also moved into a large Victorian-style mansion that was on the cemetery grounds. And he converted a good portion of this mansion into I don't know if he converted it or maybe it was already converted. It was a mortuary/funeral parlor. He pretty much made, maybe not the rest of the mansion, but at least a large portion of it outside of that into the area where he continued this exploration of his personal obsession. To help him out, he moved in members of what he called his extended family. Now, some of these people were blood relatives. Others were just slightly to completely deranged assistants that came to town that were kind of like-minded or at least wanted to help the caretaker with his work. Either way, like-minded or wanting to help him with this work, there's going to be a level of derangement, I think, in that type of individual.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a touch, yes. So as the deceased were brought into town, or I'm sorry, I should say the deceased of the town were brought into the mortuary, the caretaker and his family, which I'll be doing air quotes, I think, every time I say that, so I'll just set the stage, and his family used these bodies to continue these studies, to study the human anatomy a little deeper, see if they can find that missing piece that the caretaker had up to this point not found. And when there was a bit of a dry spell on fresh bodies, luckily he lived on the grounds of a cemetery, so he could dig some up from the cemetery and continue to work.
It's very fortunate.
Yeah. What luck.
Yeah.
And you could probably get dinner at the same time.
Yeah, that'll come up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shit.
I was like, do I reveal that or just wait till I get to it? I'm like, no, I'll come up.
Yum.
This collaboration within the family became such almost a big event, like a weekly event, that they started to make these kind of sick parties that centered around this work. They'd bring in the bodies that they wanted to work with, and while they're at it, they'd bring in a few more that may or may not be used, but while they're waiting, they kind of placed them around the house for decoration. Yeah, make it look like the party's a little more exciting than it actually is.
Right.
It's like when you invite the house of nerds down the street because you want to have more people at your party, make it look like you're popular.
Well, you want to have more people at your party and make it look full, but at the same time, you want to invite the people that have absolutely no chance with the chicks, right?
No chance with the chicks and won't drink your beer.
Right.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Oh, so you're empathizing with the caretaker now.
Well, he is one of my favorites. I will tell you that. Oh, okay. So the research continued. Eventually, I would imagine this didn't take long, but maybe it did. If they're digging up this many bodies, it must have taken some time to get to this realization. the caretaker had the realization that he was not going to find what he was looking for in dead bodies, because that missing piece, whatever it was, had to be related either to the soul or certainly to the living. So he turned his sights on researching living specimens. So to do that, he actually was a little smart. He'd go. Now, the story goes he went to a nearby town. I don't know if they mean he went out of his community and deeper into Carey, Ohio, or completely outside of Carey, Ohio. Either way, he'd go into whatever part of town they're talking about, find homeless people, and give them what would seem like an incredibly charitable offer. And that would be to stay at his mansion until they got back on their feet. All they'd have to do is help him with some of his work around the house.
Right.
So he didn't lie.
No.
Because that work was his research. Now, we discussed this in our last episode, but I really think it's worth repeating once again. Here's some of the things he did on his living, I was going to say victims. Well, they are, but I'm trying to think in his mindset, his living...
test subjects.
Thank you. There you go. That's a good one. So one task was they'd be restrained to a surgery table while he did some invasive surgery that was performed completely without anesthetic and while fully conscious. He'd do some chemical injections, again, while they're conscious. He'd do brutal amputations, live dissections, castrations. There would go my soul. He'd do some electroshock work and organ removal. He would even go outside the realm of what he knew about the human body and would experiment with some psychological factors on the body. He'd push a person's fear to the point of going mad and dying to see what would happen. And one way he would do this would be to bury victims alive. I'm sorry, test subjects alive.
Nice guy.
Yeah. Still, through all this, just no answer to be found. And this actually made the caretaker's obsession worse. He wasn't any closer to finding his answer at all. So his madness just twisted his mind into an almost almost another type of conscious state. Like he continued to work physically, but he was obviously in our world. We're not talking anything metaphysical here, but his mind was completely gone. He'd almost be in a philosophical state of how he'd approach things, and they were so disconnected to what the real world was that he wasn't living in our world mentally. He wasn't seeing things that were going on around him. And this is known because while he was in this state of mind, he would be writing down his notes and making some audio recordings. I wish some audio recordings were actually produced on this, and maybe that's a project we could take on in later seasons, but there currently is not. That would be fascinating to hear.
That would be.
Yeah.
That would be a nice little sub-series of its own to try to write. I don't know, though. That might make me a little crazy trying to write those out.
Make you a little crazy?
I was going to say, I think anytime after 3 o'clock come Wednesday at work, I'd be good for Thursday and Friday to write that out as a stream of consciousness thing.
There you go.
Yeah, so
I could have done it earlier today.
that's true. That is true. So in this new mental state, like I had kind of just prefaced, he was not seeing what was going on in the real world around him, and things started to get a little out of control at the mansion, which, saying that at this point in the story, that's pretty bad. Because apparently I didn't think decorating the house with dead bodies during a party was a problem. I didn't think that was out of hand at all.
Up until now, you just basically told us that he knew how to throw a good party.
Yeah, I guess so, right? Yeah. So his family, air quotes again, they continued the parties. Now, they were starting to take some of the body parts from the surgery and being a little more creative with them. And Quint, right back to your joke, which now is not a joke, they started to use some of those parts as dinner ingredients. Mm-hmm. Yep. More decorations, now dinner ingredients, and God knows what else.
Yeah.
They also got a little carried away with the use of the bodies. And I don't mean this in any kind of disgusting, vulgar way. They just would use them as playthings, literally like as playthings. I don't know if they would set them up at a ping pong table and duct tape a paddle to their hand and try to play with them, but they would probably, I actually envision, because of something that's about to happen later, I actually envision one of the families at a party using one as a ventriloquist dummy. Things like that. I mean, think of the most innocuous thing and then just replace whatever they're doing with a dead body, and that's kind of sounds like what it is, because that just twists this, simple, innocuous, harmless thing into something incredibly creepy and demented.
Can you imagine the puppet show?
That would be awesome. Marionettes.
Live-sized marionettes.
Yep.
Are you sure these people weren't from Shady Brook?
No, I'm not. They're some of these like-minded individuals very well may have been.
That should have been.
Should have been.
Are you sure I don't work with some of these people?
No, I'm not sure about that either. So, meanwhile, as this is going on, the caretaker is falling deeper into his own madness, and he has no control or even any concept of what the family is doing, and the watchful eye he kind of used to have over these parties is gone. So now the family is completely out of control, and this all finally catches up to everybody one night when two teenagers are walking through the cemetery. They're taking not really a shortcut home, but they're kind of taking a leisurely walk home in the middle of the night. They decide to try to scare each other by telling scary stories, almost ghost stories, as they wander through the cemetery. Well, once they come across or within earshot of the mansion, they hear music, and they follow the music, and one of these parties is going on in full swing in the mansion. They move in to take a closer look, and they see one of the family members dancing with one of these corpses. Again, kind of the setup I gave you. Take an innocuous thing like dancing and replace one of the people with the corpse. That's what they saw.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, it is. Every family party was Weekend at Bernie's. So they saw this, they took off. They weren't seen, or if they were completely disregarded, but they took off. They reported what they saw, and then the police chief in good old Carey, Ohio, Chief Brockett, he went to the mansion. He declared the entire mansion and cemetery a crime scene and placed everyone that was in the mansion at the time under house arrest. So instead of resisting in any regard, the caretaker cooperated fully. In fact, to the point where he was like eagerly showing his research off to the officers in the mansion. Yeah, he's like really proud of what he did, I guess, and wanted to show them. So the initial police report right off the bat is just, I want to say stuff of legend, but stuff of nightmares, I guess. And the news of this just spread like wildfire. Every news, whatever it was, radio, TV, whatever is at the time. There's no real timeline on this. It just reported this because it was horrifying. It was shocking. It was just everything a news outlet would want in traditional media. The potential body count from the initial inspection was said to rival that of a typical Nazi death camp.
Oh, shit.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, so this has been going on a lot longer than I'd imagined.
Yeah, well, or very quickly as they're digging up these graves.
Yeah, but man, that's a big cemetery.
Yes. Yeah. Most of the local townspeople here had some sort of connection to the victims, be the ones that were living that he killed or the buried bodies that he desecrated. So with the wheels of justice moving way too slow, the townspeople took matters into their own hands. They formed a mob and set fire to the mansion with the caretaker and his extended family still inside. Once the fire burned out and investigators were able to start looking through the remains, they never found the body of the caretaker or any of his family, except for one. They found the remains of what they thought was his daughter, Cindy. Now, Cindy, being a huge mystery in and of herself, there wasn't any records to conclusively identify the body as her. They were able to identify the remains as female. They could tell it was a child. But knowing the mind of the caretaker, he may have planted this to protect his daughter, or I put this note in, which is not in the story. Even more likely, Cindy planted the body to protect herself.
Yeah, because she is one twisted fuck.
Yes. So that's what I think happened. But that's all speculation on my part. course, this is all fictitious, so it's all speculation, but that's another story. Oh, I don't know, obviously, which one it is, if either, but hopefully that's another story to tell one day. We'll see. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, actually. What the investigators did find instead of the bodies was an elaborate network of tunnels running for miles altogether under the cemetery that all led back to the cellar of the mansion. Now, this network of tunnels allowed the family to retrieve the bodies from below the coffins and bring them back to the mansion and never have to step outside and have the possibility of being seen. This, naturally, they theorized, is probably correct how the caretaker and his family escaped the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some key pieces of evidence that survived the fire. They did find a large stove kettle that was filled with boiled body parts. They found the remnants of a corridor from the mansion that was apparently lined with intestines.
Wow. Like,
Quint speechless?
Yeah, I know,
What?
right?
it's just fucking like, I got a mental image and it just kind of got creepy.
It's worse, Quint. They're clown intestines.
No, fuck.
They found a collection of skulls, which is actually like the least disturbing thing in this list. But the most potentially disturbing thing was the caretaker's audio journal. And by going over the notes that the caretaker left in just the audio recording, they were able to piece together over 2,000 graves that had been tampered with by the caretaker, by him and his family, in his own words.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a lot of graves.
Yeah.
So, now, at this point in the story, a year's passed, and the cemetery has been sealed off from the public. It's the police and investigating whatever investigators are involved. I don't even know if it got to a federal level at this point. They were going through the ruins of the mansion extremely meticulously. So it's been ongoing for a year now. They just keep, every time they're almost treating it like an archaeological site. They're just keeping an eye out for any new evidence, any bodies they missed, anything they could possibly use to piece together all these unanswered questions. While tearing this meticulous dismantling of the ruins, 3 unidentified bodies were discovered, but they were decomposing. They weren't burnt. So soon after this, people of the town decided to disobey the quarantine of this area and just started to go out on themselves to see what had happened. Almost by all reports, all these people that did that went missing. Their bodies weren't found. They weren't these additional decomposing bodies. The only clue that led them back to the mansion was the last thing any witness could offer about these missing people was that they talked about or flat out said they were going to go check out the ruins of the mansion themselves. In addition to this, the further we get into this new mystery, there's starting to be reports of sounds coming from the ruins. So now official teams are sent to investigate, and some of them start ending up disappearing themselves. All of these events are completely unexplained, and they kind of just lay off the site for a while and only work on it in teams with everyone in eyesight of each other during the daylight. So this year-long project is now extending over 3 years. They finally get through all the ashes, all the ruins. They don't find anything more. No one else has disappeared, so they finally bulldoze everything over. At this point, it took entirely 3 years to get to this point. On this 3rd-year anniversary of this mob burning down the house and all of this being exposed, there's reports and sightings of ghostly figures and mangled bodies and decaying corpses around this site again. Even reports of a withered old gentleman in a black suit holding the hand of a dark-haired little girl. Again, by the time these reports were made and they went out to investigate, nothing was seen. This was all never confirmed. So at this point, we don't have any more sightings of the caretaker until 4 years later, when we're introduced to a character, at least in the Hollywood Horror Nights realm, named Fear. And he is introduced as a minion of, he's introduced as one of his minions, the Minion of Death. Now, here's where it is a little interesting because I don't know if they did this with all characters. I really got to go back and really closely look at pictures. But the Caretaker has these marks on the side of his neck. So it seems like he was made the minion of death and not always his minion of death like I had always kind of interpreted these minions. So this kind of puts a new aspect on Fear. I don't know if Fear is going to be able to warrant his own story, at least to the extent we just did with the Caretaker, and certainly not the extent we did with Jack. But that has actually led me to more questions I want answers to. So I might lump it in with that one of where we're kind of talking about little short stories here and there, because he just got a lot more interesting just researching the Caretaker, at least to me.
So the Caretaker was a minion? What you're saying?
Yes.
So yellow with goggles.
I was waiting. I was like, okay, that's why I kind of paused. I was like, is he going to say it or is he going to wait for a setup?
No. It just like completely makes him less scary.
Well, Karen likes him even more now.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So going back into Halloween Horror Nights lore, we'll see him one more time. We will see him one more time when he is brought back to Halloween Horror Nights. I should say, let me take that all back and say one more time so far, because I didn't think we'd ever see him again. We saw him when Jack the Clown collected the worst of the worst for the Halloween Horror Nights icon Scare Zone, and he was able to perform his signature live, conscious, no anesthetic, autopsy, heart removals over and over, night after night.
That was fun.
Yes. So, and that is it for the Caretaker. That is his story.
And it's not ended, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. He could always come back when you have these supernatural things. And the fact that he's come back, he came back in 16, came back in 25. And actually, I have his appearances. He was, like we said, he was the icon for Halloween Horror Nights 2002, Islands of Fear. He had his icon maze, Scream House. He returned the next year in 2003 for Halloween Horror Nights 13 in another maze called Scream House Revisited. He returned in 2006 for Halloween Horror Nights Sweet 16. He was part of the Arrival show. Now, I'll talk much more about that later, because this is a big change for Halloween Horror Nights and a new addition to the event that we see up to this day in the modern era of Halloween Horror Nights. So when we get to 16, we're going to talk a lot about this Arrival show. He also had a maze that year, and he finally shared this with Cindy. It was called Scream House Resurrection. It was I don't know if it was a 50-50, but she was in it a lot more than ever before. He and Cindy appeared in Shadows of the Past, Scare Zone in 2009's Halloween Horror Nights Ripped from the Silver Screen. It was another icon homage. Didn't have individual stages from what I remember like they did for this year. It was kind of the Caretaker and Cindy, I believe, are roaming characters. Let's see what I can find on that. What my notes say when we get to that. That's actually not too far down the line. 2010, he was at Halloween Horror Nights 20, as I just said, as one of Fear's minions. He was Death. And of course, in 2025, he was a huge part of the Icon Scare Zone. He was one of the 4 staged icons and had his own show, which we had just talked about. He is one of my all-time favorites. I'll tell you guys that much. I love the look. I really like this story. And I think reincorporating Cindy as his daughter actually works.
I think so.
Yep. So if there was a Halloween Horror Nights Hall of Fame for me, he would definitely be inducted.
And just by sheer amount of appearances, I think he would have to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he's pretty prolific. We've talked about some of the other icons, and they're not nearly that prolific.
I don't know. I really don't know what his popularity is among the community. I didn't think to even kind of just post that question in a forum. I kind of wish I had now, but I didn't. And he's got to be.
Well, I mean, morticians have always been like just a creepy sort of job and a creepy sort of, thing. And they put it in movies, even movies that aren't horror movies. There's often, you go into the mortuary or the coroner's office sort of thing, and it's just always a creepy vibe.
It's just, that's true. And what I was thinking while I was saying that was that if you go to the horror makeup show, which we all have been to, and you go to that Halloween Horror Nights display over to the right, it's Jack and it's the Caretaker.
That's right.
So, I mean, he must be popular, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they picked him for sure. I'm happy they do. He's one of my favorites, but he must be pretty highly regarded.
Yeah.
Plus, it is a good look for that display too. You got Jack, who's colorful, creepy but colorful, and then you have the Undertaker. You have the Caretaker, who's almost a completely grayscale palette. There's a little bit of flesh color left in his skin, but not a whole lot.
What is the eyes? Did they put color in his eyes at all?
I want to say they're kind of like that frost blue, but that just might be my...
Yeah, I'm looking at him now. Oh, and well, on the pamphlet is all done in green backlights, so they kind of look greenish there. So that's probably not a good place. Yeah, they're bright anyway.
There's a color publicity shot where they're like they have blue in them, but they're best I can describe it as a gray blue. I don't know if that's it probably is a name for that color. Oh, every color has a name, has a Pantone name, but I don't know what the Pantone color is for this, for the eyes. But just enough color so that there's color, but it still is not trailing far from that grayscale look. Yeah, I like this guy. And I talked about the commercial our last episode. One of the I thought scariest commercials for Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah, and subtle scary. Yeah,
right. Yep. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I got for this episode and for this character.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we'll probably see more of him. If they continue to do anything with the icons, we'll likely see more of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I would hope so. And between the look, the story, and the show that they've used kind of twice now, was the show he had on the stage was a short version of his... The finale was the finale of the... I guess the show actually was the finale of the opening ceremonies is where I was going with that.
Oh, okay.
So...
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I hope to see him again. That is it once again. So, I will say, I believe, we are. Our next episode coming up, we're going to continue another year, and we may do another character after that. I have not done the research yet. I don't know if we're going to have as much to talk about as we do on this one, but for sure we're going to pick up with another year on our next episode. So I'm finding this kind of fun to jump back and forth. So I'm going to, and I'll talk to you guys more about this later. I might try to have this season go back and forth between years and a specific subject, and just to kind of keep it mixing it up and keeping us a conversation going and new with each episode. I don't know how you guys have thought about that, but I've liked how this worked out so far.
Haven't really thought about it, so it doesn't sound like a bad idea to me.
Okay.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay.
I mean, I'm enjoying learning a lot about these.
Yes.
we everything's new to me, so
that's true. That is true. So Karen is, yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of the icons are new to me too. Like I only saw one, and I haven't really heard that much, except for what I needed to know for 25.
Right.
I haven't really heard the full stories behind a lot of them, and they're fun to hear.
Okay.
The team that has come up with these guys has done a really good job with their attention to detail and storytelling. So I think, it would do them justice to go through a bunch of them.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely keep that in mind. So, well, there you go. Anyone listening, sounds like what we're going to try to do this season. Well, we've said it once, we've probably said it 10 times, that the show has changed so much from what we originally intended. It'd probably change even more throughout the season. So who knows what we're going to do? We do know it's going to be about Halloween Horror Nights. We're not going to jump on here and talk about Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. That I can guarantee will never happen. At least not with me on. Maybe you guys can do it.
Oh, fuck you.
Right. Well,
you've been to Disney more often than I have.
Yeah, that's true. That's just by proximity. If I had to travel, it wouldn't happen. All right. On that note, I'm Quint cursing me out. With that, I will say thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you, Karen and Quint, for joining me and letting me talk about one of my all-time favorite icons. We will be back with a new episode. So until then, I'll say once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in that next episode. Thank you for listening to the Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights podcast. The Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights is a neozaz internet entertainment production. For more great podcasts and original entertainment, visit our website at neozaz.com. The Catacombs of Halloween Horror Nights is not affiliated with nor endorsed by Universal Studios Florida. All Halloween Horror Nights properties, icons, titles, events, and related items are property, trademark, and copyright Universal Studios or their respective trademark and copyright holders. For more Halloween Horror Nights coverage, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/neozazpodcast and follow our Twitter account at neozaz. To help support the series and all the work we do at Neozaz, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/neozaz. Thanks for listening.